And more recently, I have been realizing how much of my physical symptoms, which thankfully is way less than it used to be, how much of it is related to emotions and stress, and how food just doesn't necessarily play as huge of a role as I thought that it did previously.
Hey, what's up guys? So you guys may remember Alyse Parker, the ex-vegan who ended up going from a vegan diet to a carnivore diet and got sponsored by ButcherBox and all that. So she actually recently dropped a video in March of 2020 going over the fact that her physical symptoms that she had on the vegan diet and all these other diets that she's tried in the past that haven't worked for her were more so the result of her actual emotional and mental state, you know, like her emotions, as opposed to her actual diet and the vegan diet. So I want to go over that video today and see what we can actually conclude from this.
Hopping in with the official diet update. Over the last 5 or 6 years or so, I have pursued a lot of different ways of eating. I will list them on the screen right here. I think that'll be easier than sharing the whole list out loud. But yeah, in the past 3 months or so after my carnivore diet challenge came to a close, I realized, oh my gosh, I want to kind of release attachment to food. And for so long, I think that my attachment and focus on food was just striving to feel better. I have struggled with various different health situations over the years, digestion, brain fog, a lot of different things, and I was just always wanting to feel better. And so I was manipulating the food that I was eating, the way that I was eating, and everything in hopes of feeling better. And more recently, I have been realizing how much of my physical symptoms, which thankfully is way less than it used to be, how much of it is related to emotions and stress, and how food just doesn't necessarily play as huge of a role as I thought that it did previously.
So the main idea in Alyse Parker's ex-vegan video was that she actually needed to stop being vegan for health reasons. Now it's quite obvious, unfortunately, that Alyse Parker has struggled with a bad and awful relationship with food, and this is evident by all those little diets that we've seen her yo-yoing between, you know, the actual paleo diet, the carnivore diet, the vegan diet, different forms of the vegan diet, like the raw diet, the bulletproof diet. So she's one of those people that really just have a weird relationship with food and are probably always looking for some sort of diet to potentially make them feel the best ever. So the placebo effect is something that is very real, and for those reasons in nutritional science there's often groups within actual studies that are considered placebo control groups, okay? So I do really think that the placebo effect is very relevant to Alyse Parker's past situation. So if you go back and watch Alyse Parker's ex-vegan video where she says that she had 8 ounces of salmon, okay, she had 8 ounces of salmon one night, and then the next day all of her symptoms were basically gone and she felt amazing.
I had strong faith that I could get everything that I needed on a plant-based vegan diet, but I decided to try something for 1 week. And so going back to all of the things that I was learning about brain health, and just listening to my intuitive pull of like salmon was just like the thing that I was appealed to me. I tried salmon. I had 8 ounces of salmon one night, and this was just like a couple nights after getting back from Hawaii, so I was still like, I had all my symptoms going on. Wow, this is a long video. And I woke up the next morning with 0 congestion and 0 brain fog, 0 migraine, 0 lack of clarity. I felt the best that I had in probably like 3 years.
So if you talk to a nutritionist or a dietitian or any person with any sort of common sense when it comes to nutritional deficiencies and nutrition, you will find out that it doesn't take one meal to get over physical symptoms that are the result of an actual nutrient deficiency. So in Alyse's case, she had 1 meal, 8 ounces of salmon, okay, and the next day all of her symptoms were gone. So this kind of story, in my opinion, really reinforces what she said she realized back in March of 2020, which is that the majority of her issues, or all of her physical symptoms, are to do with her actual emotions and her emotional state, her mental health, not so much the actual food that's going into her body. This theory of Alyse Parker's issues having to do with her mental state as opposed to diet also makes sense when you take into account that she's done all these different kinds of diets, and her physical symptoms have basically persisted throughout the entirety of trying all these diets, and that is also the reason why she was trying all these diets in the first place, because no actual diet was getting rid of her physical symptoms, which really, now we know, were the result of her actual mental state and her emotions, not so much her actual diet. So she tried all these different kinds of dietary stimulus, leading us to the conclusion that maybe it isn't her diet that's the issue, but more so her actual mental state, her mental health, health and her emotions, as she said that it probably is, you know, when she made that video in March of 2020. So this whole salmon story really does support this whole new realization she's had about the fact that maybe her issues are more so to do with her actual emotions than her actual diet. Now, I don't know everything. I'm not saying that with absolute certainty that all of her physical symptoms are the result of her actual mental state. It could be a combination of the two. Her negative mental state and weird relationship with food could have caused her to have really weird eating habits. You know, a lot of people have DM'd me things about her not eating that much, and that could be an example of her actual mental health and mental situation when it comes to food causing her to eat less. She could have had a really weird relationship with food, causing her to not eat so much, leading to an actual deficiency. So it could be a combination of her emotions and her actual dietary habits, and there could be a connection too between her emotions and her dietary habits. But yeah, guys, given everything I've gone over today, you know, her video admitting that it's really emotions, not really food, that's causing these problems, and the story about eating 8 ounces of salmon and feeling amazing the next day, those two things really lead me to the conclusion that it is very likely that a lot of her issues that she had in the vegan diet were the result of her emotions, not really so much the actual diet. So why am I making this video? Well, a lot of ex-vegans have a very similar story where they have like one food and then they feel so much better. Keyword, by the way, feel, because a lot of these ex-vegans don't actually go to get blood work done and see what their actual health outcomes are objectively. They more so go off of their subjective feelings and what they feel in the moment, and if they had a salmon and they feel good. So I do think that this is something that we should be looking out for when it comes to ex-vegans. If you look at the actual ex-vegans that we have, there's like Tim Sheaf, right? Tim Sheaf was very weird about his diet. He ended up having a 28-day water fast or a 30-day water fast or something like that. Then he ended up having fish or eggs or something for the first time in 2 months, and then he ejaculated for the first time in 3 months. Very similar story to Alyse Parker, where she had the actual fish, the 8 ounces of salmon, and the next day she felt amazing. And then there's John Venus, who had some clams or fish or whatever it is he said he ate, and then his muscle cramps just went away. So these really weird overnight kind of transformations where people just eat something and then they feel amazing, that aren't really aligned with actual science and are more so aligned with the actual placebo effect. So these people are very into their diets mentally, and I wouldn't be surprised if the following happened. Now, before I even say what I'm about to say, I will say that I don't know this for sure, but it could be a possibility. So I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that these people were mentally the problem as opposed to their actual diets being the problem when it comes to the negative physical symptoms they're having. Because again, these people are eating one thing and then feeling amazing the next day. And these kinds of things don't really happen in nutritional science. You don't just solve deficiencies with one meal and then the next day feel absolutely amazing. It takes time. So these kinds of things really scream the placebo effect to me, not so much that the vegan diet was the problem to begin with. And if you look at Alyse Parker's history of trying all these different diets, you know, she's obviously very mentally occupied with what kind of diet is good for her. And John Venus now seems like he might be entertaining the carnivore diet a little bit, you know, going from one extreme veganism to the other. These are just the kind of behaviors that I think people that are very overly mentally concerned with their diets end up doing. They're so concerned with feeling good, and they start to yo-yo from different diets that are opposing opposites of each other. And it's just really weird, and it really, to me, is indicative of the fact that these people really are mentally so concerned with their actual diet and health, leading to them actually placeboing themselves into feeling better, having, you know, 8 ounces of salmon, having some fish, having some eggs, or having some fish and having your first ejaculation in 3 months. So back to Alyse, with her coming to the realization that a lot of her physical symptoms were more so the result of her emotions as opposed to the actual vegan diet, she can retract the idea of thinking she needs to support an animal holocaust to be healthy. She can go get CBT, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy, or some sort of therapy that is good for the psychological health of someone when it comes to diet, as opposed to thinking that you need to start consuming animal products, because we've established, and she even admitted this, that the actual problem here is her emotions, not really so much the actual diet. I think she should also take back the fact that in her ex-vegan video, she was saying things like, oh, I just need to eat animals to survive. Some people just can't eat animals to be in good health. These are things that I really have a problem with, right? When a person with a large audience starts saying misinformation to an impressionable audience which believes basically everything they say, and you know, when she made that ex-vegan video, I'm sure there were people that ended up thinking, oh, maybe I can't go vegan. And you know, people are always looking for excuses to continue to support the animal holocaust. So it's really not responsible for people like Alyse to have videos like that out. So I think she should end up retracting the video and say, hey, maybe it wasn't the vegan diet that was the issue. Maybe it's my actual emotional state, not the vegan diet. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Please comment, like, subscribe if you like my work and want to support me on Patreon. Check out the link in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video.